Hello and welcome back. MC1 Gamer here, bringing you another, I guess, look at the new GHB2, the new General's Handbook 2 for Age of Sigmar. So we have another peek into what's coming within the next few weeks from an article that was recently, that just about maybe an hour or two ago, was recently posted on the Warhammer community page and then spread across various different elements of social network. And there's some really great just really great elements that people are that people are already starting to talk about as it pertains to order subfactions and the general alliance. This is great news for a lot of the subfactions more than anything else. But there are some higher level changes and improvements that are looking to be made. And again, we don't have all the information, so we're gonna have to wait until the General's Handbook 2 comes out to really get a good spread of all of the different pieces that are going, that for whatever specific subfaction you play, maybe you play them all. But it's a really nice thing to be able to see just how the kind of improvements that are being made and enhancements that are being made for an army that you perhaps maybe you're painting right now, maybe it's been sitting on the shelf. Like I have two armies sitting on the shelf that I haven't really gotten to in a while, just because I wasn't sure where it was going or what I would need to do to tweak it, or and there's very much a lot of encouragement because one of them happens to be Duarden that they've showed today. Some of the people that may have Wanderers, there's some really good news. So we're going to take a look at that today, and feel free to chat amongst yourselves. And you have questions, I'll try to take a look at the live chat portion. I'll see if I don't always get to that, and I'm usually distracted by my own my own thoughts. But I'll try to go and take a look at some of the thoughts that people have, and maybe we'll try to address them. But just going to go over it. If you haven't seen the link yet, feel free to go ahead to the link and read through it yourself. If you haven't seen it, you don't know all the news, well, I'm going to go through it now. So hopefully you'll be able to join me either live or maybe later on further in time. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and move out into the page that has the all the new information. And again, I'm really excited. I want to first say that I am incredibly excited for this new book. I was excited and a little bit a little bit tense about the first General's Handbook and what might happen to the game, but it was a profound improvement in vastly overshadowing any of the few drawbacks that I particularly felt about the first General's Handbook. But it certainly changed the trajectory of Age of Sigmar and changed the trajectory of the game overall, and for the positive, overwhelmingly for the positive. Even if you don't play competitive, with the narrative campaign, with expanded stuff for open, there was a lot of great benefits, and I'm really looking forward to what they're going to be adding in here. There's things like maybe more expanded narrative, path to glory type stuff. There's going to be obviously more integration from multiple armies on the same tabletop. But let's get right to this specific. I'm sure we're going to see more things unfold over time that are going to focus on particular factions. Well, let's take a look at order, and this is what they gave us today. And I'll go ahead and read it because I've gone through this a couple of times. I've taken a look at it, but let's go ahead and go through it together. So the order, it's one of the biggest, it's one of the most diverse of the Grand Alliances. Great, that is actually true. Even if you're not playing some of the ones like Sylvaneth, I have a Sylvaneth army, or Stormcast, which is wildly popular. There's a lot of people playing it. The Free Peoples, I'm very much looking forward to seeing where the Free Peoples go. There's a lot of Duarden is one that I just mentioned, but there's also the various different elves. And while we are hoping to see some new books coming up down the pipe, new tomes, it would be really nice to see some, and this is what we're going to be seeing, some more of some more enhancements to some of the non-battle tome books. It'll help them become more competitive. It'll help them with a little bit more flavor. I just want to have full disclosure here. I really didn't mind the imbalance of pre-General's Handbook 1. I thought there's ways that we could tweak it, but of course it just didn't seem complete, the game, and it needed more. You needed to do more with it. And the structured rules of the General's Handbook 1 kind of helped rein in some of the crazy. So I like games that sometimes are stacked against you, or where you have the tremendous advantage, but you have to overcome many more hurdles in order to achieve victory. I do like that type of game structure, but what I don't like is when you have armies and available options that are incomplete, where the competitive nature is so insurmountable with what you're faced with a more complete book or a more fleshed out book, like something that has a battle tome, where you just don't have the options. You don't have battalions, you don't have artifacts, you don't have allegiance abilities. You're defaulting to some of the more general higher level ones, and it does put you at a severe disadvantage. But you don't even have enough unit selection, which we see with even some of the existing books, like Iron Jaws, for instance, where they really kind of need one or two more units. I think it would have been really, maybe we'll see that in the future too, where maybe a couple more, a little more expansion to kind of flesh that out would do them really a big favor. But the fact is, there are some even of the broken out sub factions in Order that weren't able to work. And one of the greatest things that we're looking forward to is this ally structure, which allows you a lot of flexibility. There's going to be limitations, as has been discussed on my channel and others, where you are going to have a limited list of what you can ally with. It's not just everything in your Grand Alliance, and it will get segmented and siloed out, which is fine. That gives it still a little segment of flavor, and it does also limit some of the crazy. But it's nice to see that some of these lesser fleshed out armies will be able to do stuff like, for instance, they're describing in this particular article, the addition of a steam tank, say, for instance, to a dispossessed army that does not have a behemoth. And there have been plenty of people, including myself, that have done or are in the process of doing conversions of a kind of a thematic steam tank, like the mini walker for the dwarves, for the Duardin, that is a steam tank, which is one that I'm doing, that I've seen so many people do, and it's so creative and it's so flavorful. So it's the kind of thing that allows you to have that. Doesn't change necessarily the war scroll, but it gives you the ability to add these new elements in, even if you're not going to go crazy with the conversion route. If you're just going to take them purely out of the box, to kind of plug some of the holes and the gaps, make up for some of the deficiencies that allow you to make this army and this list a little bit more competitive and a little bit more on par with some of the more the higher tiered ones that have battle tomes. So I'm really looking forward to that. So they use that as an example here. Obviously, everybody is going to be looking at the Luminarch and the Hurricanum from the Wizard of Collegiate Arcane. So that's almost a guaranteed default, and I happen to also be doing a Duardin conversion of a Celestial Hurricanum for my dispossessed army to have a little bit more depth there as well. I'm going to probably have to choose between that and the steam tank because I'm sure the points won't allow it, but it's great. Next thing, it's just a great option to have. It's really nice. Okay, so the next thing that we have here is the Seraphon. They mentioned that, and I'm really excited about this because I love the Seraphon army. I really came close to buying one. I've had one in the past. I have a couple friends locally that play them. I just haven't seen them as much as I'd like to in the competitive circuit. And astonishingly enough, as powerful and how crazy as they were in the open play, they seem to really be diminished after the GHB1. And as new battle tomes came out for armies, somehow they kind of got pushed down. They weren't performing as well. There were some circumstances where we saw them do well, but overall, you just didn't see them in a lot of the top tier results, which were dominated by order and chaos. And maybe a smidge of death and destruction, but really dominated by order and chaos, depending on the time frame. In any case, this gives us an insight to how they're really going to benefit from a lot of these new rules. They use this as an example that there are new War Scroll battalions, which I'm really happy to see. Obviously, everybody's getting new artifacts and allegiance abilities. We see that there's going to be some warlord traits. I only hope that there's more battalions for all of these sub-factions. We haven't really heard about that yet, and I'm a little concerned about that because battalions give you a lot of extra benefits, like, for instance, being able to take an extra artifact, for example. But and of course have a smaller footprint in terms of how much you're deploying, what your number is to deploy, so you have a good chance of choosing whether you want first turn or not. But that's something that has been discussed on other shows, and I'm sure will be discussed again in the future. But let's talk about this particular rule here. All right, this particular battalion called the Lords of Space and Time. It's actually an allegiance ability, and it lets you remove a unit and replace it anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from the enemy. So it's kind of like a summoning aspect where you have that proximity limitation, but it's an existing unit on the table, relocating to where it's strategically beneficial to you. I think this is great. And it's not out of control. It's not everything in your army. You pick one unit. So you can obviously have different target units that you want to use later on. But this is fantastic. It means that, it's beam me up, Scotty, beam me down. I mean, there is a little bit of sci-fi in our fantasy. Don't panic and freak out, everybody. But these are the space lizards that left the old world and came back. But what I like about this, it gives a very slow-moving army, or a moderately moving army, like the Seraphon, more mobility. It gives them a chance to play the mobile game. Maybe not up to the same level that you might see with elves or some of the other fast-moving armies, but it allows them to have some element rather than just some of the slogging, slow-moving Saurus warrior blocks, or for example. So this one, give you as an example, it allows you to combine other elements like the Troglodyte, which has a nice new ability called Drawn to the Screams, which I love. It's just so thematic. I love it when they don't just create these wacky rules, that they actually have a rational reason why they're doing it, and it fits the army, it fits the model, it fits the war scroll. That's stuff that I really, really love. So in this one, we have the ability, for instance, if you use its Noxious Spittle, it causes these screams in your opponent that send your Troglodyte into a frenzy, that they want to go after this, their victim, and it gives them a 3-inch addition to their charge distance. So that's great. They already have a pretty decent charge distance, but imagine using that in conjunction with the relocation ability that you have with the Lords of Space and Time. So that's really what they're getting at here. This taking a behemoth, potentially being ridden by a cold one, an old one warrior, and you can reposition it outside the 9 inches, like 9¼ inches or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're able to use the shooting attack, which is standard. And if you caused any damage, any wounds, now your 9-inch charge is a 6-inch, and that's very much 9 inches is it takes an above average roll to achieve that, but 6 is just an average roll. I mean, some would say statistically it's easier, it's better than average. So either way, this is a huge boon and a huge advantage, and you could do this with other units too. Maybe it's not specifically this one. We don't know some of these other rules and updates that we're going to see to some of these war scrolls. So this is a nice enhancement and just a peek into what we're going to be seeing for Seraphon and some of their benefits. Okay, so, and they give you some other examples, like taking a slow-moving unit like a Saurus Warrior block, which absolutely is one of the elements that you might consider. You take maybe even a maximum horde-sized Saurus Warrior unit that gets a discount cost. They're rather slow. They can, you have some elements that help the Saurus Warriors move more quickly, but they don't have some of the great mobility for the points investiture that you have. And if you really want to get this bulky unit onto an objective, this is a great way to do it using the Lords of Space and Time. They also use an example of the Engines of the Gods, which is another great one, but I don't think it's to get into combat. It's usually to kind of get away. Which is nice, but that would also beg the question, if they do that and they were previously in combat, are they considered retreating? I know that there's a lot of contention about that with Sylvaneth, for example, and I know there's disparaging comments about it, but differing opinions. Just be polite about how you discuss that, please. All right, so here's another one that I really think is going to resonate with people. There's a lot of players that have been playing Wanderers, and Wanderers have had a very just a deficiency in that they're one of those sub factions, harkening back to the legacy days pre-AOS, where they just don't have a book. So they needed something that was more flavorful, and they're already quick and they already have some good mobility issues, but now they have this melt away ability, and this is great. All right, Wanderers are impossibly difficult to lock in combat, melting away to strike from afar with their missile weapons. So if you retreat, you can still shoot in the shooting phase. That's fantastic. All right. Anytime you can break the standard rules, shoot in the shooting phase, shoot in different phases is one thing. That's or attack out of order, maybe in the hero phase, things like that. That always provide an advantage. But when you can add an element of combat with this mobility aspect, like for instance a retreat, where you don't have the ability to shoot. It removes that ability. You lost certain things to gain the benefit of removing yourself from a bad situation where you're outmatched in melee, but then be able to take some of your strength, which with Wanderers is shooting. That's a massive boon. So being able to see that is going to be awesome. And okay, and here's one for the Duardin. And again, I haven't really feel the Duardin or other old school dwarves very much. I've tried them out. I use them as an example when I've done demo days. I've taken some, some just smallish groups of armies for like 500 or 700 points to kind of demo and show people how the game works, the mechanic, with, one mobile army or maybe ogres as like a kind of like showing some larger figures, but with smaller model count against the Warden. And it really works when it comes to demoing. But I've been very concerned about where the Dispossessed are going or not going with Age of Sigmar. And it's really, nice to see that they're getting a little bit of attention. The same, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Free Peoples are going to get, for example. But we're only getting these little snippets, and this stuff is coming up soon, so we're all going to know at the same time. So here we go. If you're an old fan school of Duardin, the Dispossessed are the army for you. Well, that's a nice positive spin there. Thank you. But thanks to Stubborn to the End, Dispossessed units are nearly impossible to shift, and you'll be able to safely take huge units of them. So in essence, what this says is that on a battle shock, if you roll 1, 2, or 3, you pass the test. Doesn't make a difference how many of you lost. So if you have a massive unit of, of 20 or 30, well, 20 is not massive, but 30, maybe even 40, I forget what the cap is on some of the Dwarven units. I'm guessing that they'll probably be brought up to 40 if they aren't already. But if you have like 30 or 40 of these, and you take massive losses where you would lose more from battle shock, if you roll a 1, 2, or 3, you're not going to take it. You're going to have to roll pretty poorly, and that's a really interesting benefit. It's something that I think is it's very dwarfy. It's very Duardin-y, I guess you can call it now. And then they use an example. Here we go. 30 Iron Breakers make for a great core to build any Dispossessed army around. I agree. If you got 30 of them, why not? It's not going to be a fast-moving army, but they are going to be solid. And now, ever more than before, they're going to be hard to move off of whatever, wherever they are, just by virtue. You're not going to be able to grind them down as easily. Then we have some artifacts, which is always good. Always good, and this is something that I'm very excited about. We only see 4 out of the 6, but let's go through them. Some of them are better than others, and they do highlight the Ancestral Pickaxe as one to really to really look at here. But let's look at all of them. Heavy Metal Ingot. Okay, so you can reroll failed save rolls for this model as long as it did not move in the same turn. All right, it's not so bad. Maybe if we had more characters, I think. If it was like a situation where we had the Dwarf Lord on a Shield Bearers, which is a compendium scroll, which, look, it's probably not going to be listed here with points. There's the question of whether or not a lot of TOs are going to allow maybe the points that are in the GHB1 to also be usable, where they're just going to default maybe to what they see in the GHB2. I know that was a question when Forge World points came out and new restructuring of points came out in the app, for example, that broke things out and changed them, where the text, this hard copy was dated all of a sudden, which I hope is the truth, where it's the most recent point cost, the most recent war scroll would be the rule. I think that should be the new rule. I really hope TOs go that way. That way, people can mix and match and even use some of their older armies, and then or not. They could stay dedicated to new armies, but it would be nice to be able to still have that going. But when I look at something like this, I don't think that this is a great artifact to take if I had the choice. Unless I had something that was beefy and had a good armor, good profile save, and I wanted the ability to re-roll it. But if it was just like a regular 5-wound hero, which is all we have with the updated and newer war scrolls, it doesn't. I don't think it really benefits it that much. I don't look at this as a great artifact. It may, and I don't think it's even situational. It really is war scroll dependent, and there's just not enough of characters or even generic characters that are sufficiently matching that to make it worthwhile for me to take. The one that they highlight is the Ancestral Pickaxe. So I'm going to get back to that because I might talk more about that. Let's go over to the Grudge Room. All right, and this is after armies have been set up before the first battle round starts. Pick one hero in the enemy army. You can reroll failed hit and wound rolls for this model if the target of the attack is the chosen enemy hero. Now, I love this one. This is a army-wide, you are our target. You could take a big centerpiece model. It could be Nagash, it could be Archaon, it could be one of the big Chaos Demons or characters, whatever it is, shooting hand-to-hand. If you're attacking that model, you can reroll failed hit and wound rolls. Pick one hero. I love it. Public enemy number 1. There could be secret missions. You see a lot of regional GTs that have secret missions or alternate missions. I love that stuff. where there's many more ways to win the game. That could be something that really could help you. It could also just be because you have some really big centerpiece, nasty, hard to kill, and very dangerous monster or creature on the table. It has to be a hero, and you want a little extra oomph to be able to get that thing off the table as quickly as possible. I love it. Okay, so there you go. Could be Fate Weaver, could be Sail, could be one of the big boys like Nagash. Either way, they're usually harder to take down, or they're really important that require your focused attention. And anything that can allow you to enhance your ability to remove them off the table is good. And it does feel very, very dwarfy, where they have this grudge against that one figurehead that perhaps did them wrong in the past. Okay, moving on to the next one. We can't really see this one completely, but I think we can get an idea of what it is that this is getting at. That's the Pile Driver Gauntlets. At the start of the combat phase, you declare that this model will strike the ground instead of attacking. If you do so, your opponent must subtract 1 from hit rolls, yada, yada, yada. And it looks like we see like a 6-inch thing. I think that this is a proximity to the hero that has this artifact, very much akin to what we see with the Morngul, where it's like you're -1 to hit if you're within this 6-inch radius of this model. And this is great. But once again, I really wish that the dwarves, specifically the dwarves, the Dwarden, had a bigger model or a beefier hero to be able to use with this. Because the Warden King is just not strong enough to really last very long. He's only 5 wounds, and he's a major target. And you don't have anything in the Dwarden that's more than 5 wounds. But this will allow them to be a little, if they're a hand-to-hand, close combat, in-your-face type of a character, like a Warden King would be, this is the kind of thing that will help them, because they'll be able to move up there with units and help those units as well. Maybe they're surrounded by 2 warrior units, or or maybe a hammer unit and an Ironbreaker unit on either side flanking him. And that 6-inch is going to impact the any units that are within range engaged with those other 2 units, as well as your Warden King. So this is something that could increase their survivability and extend their life a little more. So I do like that. It's definitely going to be, again, a situational thing. The Ancestral Pickaxe. Now, they talk about it in the article, so let's look at it. And I love this one, too. Once during the battle, in your hero phase, you can remove this model and up to 1 other friendly dispossessed unit within 3 inches of this model from the battlefield. They are set up again at the start of your next hero phase, anywhere in the battlefield, on the battlefield, within 3 inches of each other and more than 9 inches away from the enemy. This counts as their move for the following movement phase. So it's in your hero phase. Consider this. Let's say you have a Rune Priest, okay? And you want to give that Rune Priest the ability to maybe enhance rending or whatever to a unit. And that Rune Priest takes this ability. This is kind of like, it's from the way I'm reading it, you're removing the model from play, okay? It's not existing until your next hero phase. You're kind of taking it out of the action for your turn. It's kind of a little strange, all right? They're set up again at the start of your next hero phase, okay? All right, so you're doing it in your hero phase, and then it's gone into your next hero phase. That could be pretty beneficial, too. You don't know where it's going to be. It's immune to counterattack. It could be a situation where you're giving some benefits for shooting, the shooting ability to a unit, like, for instance, a unit of Iron Drakes, something or Quarrelers, something where you've enhanced them, maybe where they get an extra rending ability. They're in range for their attacks. You remove them from the battlefield. You put them in a place where they can go snipe enemy characters or any serious a unit that's maybe handling an objective to kind of support your a unit that's engaging with it in the following turn. You have a lot of flexibility, but it gives some mobility to the Dwarven that desperately need it. And where miners and some of their special rules were so awesome, and I'm hoping that they're not going to be neutered completely or removed from the game because of TO decisions to not allow those compendium scrolls in use, because they're listed under the compendium, unfortunately, the miners. I really hope that they're kind of molded into the regular list. because they have such a great mechanic. But this gives a little bit of that mobility to help you not just be a tanking, turtling army where you just sit back with slow-moving, short, stubby feet and not be able to do stuff. You have the ability, even though you have to do it through an artifact, to remove a character and what could be a very large horde-sized unit and reposition it. It could be reposition it onto an objective with a very hard to move unit of iron breakers or a very tough offensive unit of hammerers, whatever. It gives you the option. It could be something like moving the steam tank if you take a steam tank. It only says it's a friendly, oh no, excuse me, I'm sorry. It's a friendly dispossessed unit. So that's a little different. I also really, just looking forward, I'm really hoping that they change to what it says in the war scroll where gyrocopters and gyrobombers are not singular models, that you can take them as units, because the war scroll itself says they can be taken any number. And when the General's Handbook, I think this might have been an oversight, I have no idea, where it only was units of 1. I really hope they expand that, because that was something that kind of bugged me. You couldn't see the flights and fleets of gyro bombers, which are really expensive anyway. Okay, but that's something that we do know, and not what we don't. All right, so let's take a look now at Fire Slayers. All right, Fire Slayers have gotten so much love. They kind of needed it. They're really cool, and a lot of people really resonated with them. But early on, I think when they first came out, people didn't go gaga over them. But after the points break and some people out there like Kenny, who has really championed the cause of the Fire Slayers, there's been some effort to really give some more focus, and I think they've really caught on quite a bit since they first came out. They kind of was a little bit of a slow burn at first, and now there's really a lot of interest, and I think it's wonderful that with the allies we're going to be able to see them in kind of match up with Duardin and even the Quadrant Overlords. But they're getting a couple of the more interesting things here as well. This is a battle trait. Okay, so this battle trait at the start of your hero phase, you can activate one of the 6 Urgold runes. You state which one will be activated and roll a dice. And on a roll of 1 to 5, the rule has the standard effect. But on a 6, it has the enhanced effect. So there's a chance it could be supercharged. And it lasts until the start of your next hero phase. So let's take a look at them. Let's see. We have here, it can only be activated, no more than 1 can be activated at the same time. And once you've used it, you can choose to use a new one. You can choose a new one to use in your next hero phase, but you cannot use the same one again. That's pretty interesting. So I wonder if there's going to be more than just these 3 options. So the Rune of Fury, reroll hits of 1 in the combat phase for friendly Fire Slayer units. That's pretty good. And the enhanced effect is add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons by friendly Fire Slayer units. That's awesome. So that's a pretty nice double whammy there. Rune of Searing Heat. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of attacks made by friendly Fire Slayer units if the wound roll for the attack was 6 or more. Okay, so this can be modified. Anytime you see 6 or more, it means it can be modified. Enhanced effect. That's if you roll a 6 on the roll prior. Enemy units within 3 inches of any friendly Fire Slayer units when this rule is activated in the hero phase suffer a mortal wound. Now look, it's only 1 mortal wound. Okay, and honestly, how many units of Fire Slayers are going to have, and how many of them are going to be within 3 inches of enemies? But any little bit counts, and it's a mortal wound. It's a mortal wound. There's very few things that will help you with mortal wounds. I mean, most armies have them, but it's a situational thing. I would rather have more mortal wounds than not. Okay, I know, a silly comment, but hey, there it is. Rune of Awkward Steel. Of Awakened Steel. Yes, words are hard. Increase the rend characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Fire Slayer units by 1. Always a good thing. Rend is always good. So now if you even have like a moderate -1, well, now a -2 is pretty handy, and a 2 is just like take away your armor. So that's awesome. The enhanced effect is increase the rend characteristic by a further 1. I would like to have seen something else. It's nice to get a second, 1 rend, but in a lot of cases, that 1 rend makes it just absolutely devastating already, because if you have any rend, an additional 1 almost removes the armor completely. But it's nice. It means that you could have something. I don't have the characteristics in front of me for the Fire Slayers, but let's say you had no rend. On this enhanced ability, you now have something that had no rend turned into a -2, which is pretty devastating. -2 is pretty scary. Okay, next. All right, coupled with 2 new word scrolls and a recently released Start Collecting box. Yes, all great stuff. It's a good time to get started with Fire Slayers. Yes, I agree. Now they talk finally about that order in general is getting a lot of stuff. There are things that are going to happen with all these different allegiance abilities, but the overriding order allegiance is going to be improving. And that is from this battle trait called Defiant Avengers. So the forces of order are confident of their abilities and are determined to drive the minions of chaos from the mortal realms. You can reroll battle shock tests for friendly order units in the battle shock phase. So it's not limited to the proximity to your general. That's a big deal. The example they give is that this is a great defensive ability and one that makes large-sized units of elite models more viable than ever. This is great in the order Serpentis, and you'll want to field large units of Drakespawn Knights or Drakespawn Chariots. Yes, that would be nice. I'd love to see that. Which are now, here's a great little snippet that they didn't really even highlight. It's kind of snuck in here. They're now battle line if. It's weird, battle line if, but contingent battle line. The bottom line is these guys are now Drakespawn Chariots, which I'm guessing they mean both the Knights and the Chariots are now battle line if. I guess if you're, if that's what your main allegiance is to, that's great. Anytime we have more of those options, and I'm sure we're going to see that across all of these sub-factions, anytime we see more options to make those units battle line is fantastic, especially when you consider that some of the allied scenarios that allow you to draw in generic battle line and help still qualify towards your battle line requirements, that's great. But if your allegiance is to a particular sub-faction, if there's more options, I'm so for that. I'd like to see more of that. Just because some of these armies did not have enough flexibility. And being able to do that and still then be able to take allies outside of that sub-faction without breaking it, it really brings up the lower tiered sub-faction army type lists, giving them more flexibility and depth. All right, so they say they've only scratched the surface and there's more to come. That's wonderful. Can't wait to see more of this stuff. Hey, let me know what you think about this. I know this was kind of just a focus on the order aspect. That's what our news was of the day, and we're going to be seeing more of that. But what kind of stuff, what do you think about these changes? Do you think they're benefits? Do you think they go far enough? What other changes would you like to see made? And that's it. Let's discuss. Have a great day, everybody.